Well, the weather pattern across the country, very active right now. We saw a mess of stuff last week with severe weather and more snow in parts of the northern plains. And we're going to see more of that in the forecast again here to start this week. Joining us now, Eric Snodgrass of Nutrien to walk through the weather. Eric, and good to catch up with you again. And obviously, as I mentioned last week, a really tough week, a lot of severe weather, a lot of tornadoes throughout parts of the Midwest and the Mid-South, and then you throw in snow across the northern plains. It was just another active weather week last week again, Eric.
Yeah, we've got one more go of it too. But if you just look at just the past weekend, add up all 3 days, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, we were at over 1,400 reports of severe weather, including well over 100 tornadoes. They're still trying to figure out the total amount of damage from that, but it was substantial. If I could find any sort of silver lining, it was just to say that there wasn't a crop on the ground yet. So we didn't destroy a lot of crop, but we destroyed a lot of infrastructure and the livelihoods of lots and lots of people. So those are rough days on us, just to try to watch. You watch it, you forecast it, you predict it, but it's inevitable what it's going to be doing. And you're right, on the northern side of that system produced 6 to 18 inches of snow going through parts of South Dakota, through Minnesota, and then into northern Wisconsin. And that's all snow falling on top of areas that have a bunch of snow. And then what are we starting off this week talking about? Another system came through the Northwest this past weekend. It's dipping into the plains tonight, shows up tomorrow. So we have another large area throughout the Midwest and Mid-South for severe weather risk tomorrow. Does not seem to look to be the same position nor the same intensity as that system. There's some timing issues here. But one area that is similar, that would be parts of Iowa, Western Illinois, northeastern Missouri. Those areas are just going to get targeted again. And then on the northern side of that, we got a bunch of snow. So there's the potential from coming out of Wyoming, hitting parts of South Dakota, going up to the Red River Valley of the North, maybe another 10 to 15 inches of snow, maybe locally heavier amounts. And so we're adding that on top of a place that's already got just a tremendous amount of water in the snowpack already. So the big question is even if the spring warmth starts to show up, which there's some indications that it can, how much will that snowpack keep the area colder than average, one? And if it does come in and warm things up, how quickly do we start this big flood fight we're anticipating for this spring? And I think a lot of focus, even though there's a lot of severe weather happening right now, it's going to go to the following time period when the pattern begins to break and shift, showing some warmer conditions around and after mid-month, what that's going to mean for that spring flood fight up north. And you and I were talking before this. I'll be honest, the number I'm thinking about here is we're still 45 days away from even thinking about getting stuff going, not only in the northern plains, but Canadian Prairie, that whole region.
Well, and I know you mentioned looking at the temperature outlook for the month ahead for April, this from the National Weather Service on the 31st of March. I mean, according to this, and you could walk us through this on the video feed here, Eric, not looking like we're going to get a warm up at least the first part of this month, probably anytime soon.
Well, we do have a small pattern change that's happening next week, and there's going to be a big ridge that builds into the west, so they're going to start to warm up. But the question we all have is, how long does that last? Because as you can see from this map, they want to go back over to the pattern we saw in the month of March for the month of April, right? And that means that if you keep that stripe of equal chances going from Arizona and Mexico straight to Lake Huron, that's where the jet stream pattern is going to line up the storm systems. And we're just going to go back into this at the end of the month of April. So if this map verifies, then this is an even worse situation for the northern plains. So we actually need to see the Climate Prediction Center be wrong. We all need to be wrong. We want the whole thing to blow wide open and go forward. But right now we don't have those indicators, because if it does stay wet in the Mid-South, it stays wet in the Midwest and stays wet in the northern plains, where do we stay dry? Well, down in the southern plains, down in where there's already drought. This is one of those patterns that if it doesn't break, we're going to see these recent temperature and precipitation anomaly maps just get more colorful, which means they're going to continue to show problems in certain places. So we're all waiting, right? I mean, just sitting here on our hands kind of going, all right, when is this going to break to get going? Well, everyone except for the Southeast. They've been mild, and they're going after it quick.
Well, and to your point, I know you've mentioned this here a few weeks ago, is you're looking at tight planting windows here this spring, not just the issues in the northern plains, but the eastern corn belt, the western belt, et cetera, et cetera. So it just feels like this forecast is setting us up for some of those tight windows, depending on what verifies here, Eric.
Yeah, and you and I, everybody listening knows how much work has to get done in the next 6 weeks. 6 weeks from now is mid-May, and here we are waiting. So this pattern is really it's not the right pattern that we want. We need to get more warmth farther to the north, but as soon as that happens, we're going to start fighting a flood. So I think there's going to be a lot of trouble in the north, and it's not a good situation.
Well, we'll be watching it closely. Eric, catch us up on South America. Any updates there we need to pay attention to this week?
Yeah, trends over the weekend brought better rains into Brazil, so they're going to start to fill in some of those gaps that were a little drier lately. No major problems. We expect Brazil's safrinha crop to be quite large. I don't even have any indications that the monsoon's going to shut down early, which, by the way, an early shutdown of the monsoon is in the next 15 to 20 days, and it's just not there. So that means that safrinha crop could be quite large. The problem areas are in far southern Brazil, a place called Rio Grande do Sul. There's a river that runs through there called the Paraná River, very important river basin. It's dry almost its whole length. And as a result, that's a key productive area that's not going to hit numbers that that they'd want to see, but they're going to make up for it farther to the north. And all the heavy rain that just came through Argentina, we saw the NDVI numbers jump way up, but that was just because when it rains, you're going to get some stuff showing up greener. But the problem is longer term than that, and 4 months of drought just hammered that Argentinian crop. So yeah, there's kind of a similar story progressing in South America as to one we've been talking about in North America.
Well, before we wrap it up, any final thoughts? Anything else you're watching around the world that we need to keep an eye on?
Top priority for me is to really understand how quickly we transition to a full El Nino pattern. La Nina's demise was fast. There's still a lot of indicators that we're just screaming toward El Nino-like conditions. And so we're trying to pull out what that might mean for summer. We all remember, though, that El Nino while it's a big climate driver, it's not the only thing. But if you just use El Nino as your metric, well, you're going to probably see more positive outlook on the upcoming growing season. But Jesse, can the crop get in, especially in the north, to have a positive effect added to it by El Nino? So we are in a rough next 6 weeks and trying to forecast and predict where this is going.
Well, we'll stay close with you and keep an eye on the weather as we move forward. You can sign up for Eric's daily weather newsletter as well online at markettalkag.com. Eric Snodgrass with Nutrien, thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Yeah, you bet.